What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to No Impulse Control. I am Justin,
I am Jasmine.
and today is a super special episode. We've got two reasons, actually. One, it's the first time you can actually see us, but two, you can also
Yay!
see the third person here, and that's our first guest, Troy Nadeau. He has a lot of experience working in the content creation, and that's kind of the idea of what we're working through today. So, Troy, if you want to give yourself a little introduction.
Yes, like you said, my name is Troy Nadeau, and I work in both studio recording and live events with Impact Technology Service and Almost Islanders Music, respectively. I've got a lot of different hats that I put on and off throughout the day, so I consider myself a really specialized generalist, if that makes sense.
That's awesome.
A nice little catch-22 to start the day.
I
There
was
you
gonna
go.
say a little. What's the saying? A master of none, but a or what is it? What's that saying? Am I blanking
Um,
now?
I know exactly what you're saying, and it's such a common phrase, and I know that most people cut the second half off.
Yeah,
It's
I'm looking it up. Jack of all trades, master of none.
there you go.
Sorry,
yes,
there's an elephant in my background.
you're all set.
So Troy, biggest question that I have, and probably the one that everybody wants to know is, what is your favorite kind of content creation?
My favorite kind of content creation. Um, I think the best way to answer that question is kind of highlighting one of what I think is kind of the biggest roadblocks that a lot of content creators come into, which is not necessarily lack of time, but a lot of us are kind of pushed to do this outside of our monetary constraints and what we're doing in our daily lives. You know, we all hold down day jobs to kind of keep these bills paid.
Mhm.
And I find that if you go too long into, I'm working this job and now I'm podcasting, and I'm working this job and now I'm on the radio, and I'm working this job and now I'm doing this, it kind of takes the passion out of those things that you choose to do. So my favorite forms of content creation are the things that are still fun, and what people kind of enjoy the most in their own workflows. And for me, that's really recording. I like to set up, multi mics and to get instrument captures and things like that. Even if I'm going through a really tedious week and doing a lot of different things that I don't necessarily find a whole lot of joy in, just sprinkling a little bit of that in there really helps everything kind of stay interesting, and it helps me stay invested in it.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I think that's the most important thing, is to make sure it's fun. Because if you if
Mhm.
you lose the joy, then what's the point?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And it's like it's a dangerous thing too. I think it's one of like the the key issues for up and coming content creators is it creeps up on you. That loss of joy. It presents itself like a real wall that you run into. Like one day you just wake up and you're like, man, I'm not having fun with this anymore. But the truth is, that kind of happened over a span of months, maybe weeks.
Mhm.
And it's really hard to notice that in yourself and identify that before you hit that wall. So it's something that I myself like to talk a lot about, and I like to share my opinions on it with others, because I think that it's a lot easier to find joy with company, and it's a lot easier to stay invested with people who are still invested themselves.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm still muted or not.
No, you're
Nope.
good.
No.
I'm good. Okay. I've been turning it on and off so I don't catch coughing and stuff, but I know Justin, you and I were doing streaming together for a while, and it came I don't, so sorry.
You're all
Um
set.
it's my husband in the background, everyone. But there came a point where I hit a wall where I was like, I don't every Friday is so much, and I'm not having fun because I was playing these video games with you and I was having so much fun, and then all of a sudden it was like, this is a job again, and you're having so much fun streaming and I'm just not. And then I kept making plans on Friday so that I like, oh darn, can't stream because I just was so burnt out that it was hard for me to have that motivation, or I was getting really irritated on stream and it was just a lot. So it's yeah. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to starting again soon whenever you're ready, Justin. Whenever you're not burned out.
Yeah, it's definitely something we've all kind of fallen victim to in here and there in different places and what
Mhm.
we've been working on over long periods of time.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people kind of rely on diversity to try to kind of get away from that. They'll go from podcasting to streaming. But I see that as a really a limited solution, because there's only so many ways that you can diversify yourself. I think communication is so much more of it's much better of a tool to kind of address that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
For sure.
I mean, you see that a lot in like YouTubers who've been doing it for a while. They're like, man, I just needed a week. I needed a week to take off and like, and they get there, to be with my people. So it's important. And we did talk about this a little bit, not really about content creation, but burnout just itself. We did an episode about like mental health, which if you haven't watched that, go watch that. But we talked about that a little bit, of the idea of like, talk to people, vocalize it. Like it's okay to not be okay. It's not okay to hold it in all the time. And that's kind of a big thing, especially with content creators, where they end up they don't have either one. They don't have that like community around them, or two, they don't feel like they can talk to the community. So important to definitely bring that up. For sure.
Definitely. I think that the whole idea of content creation is such a emotional topic, and it might not kind of seem like that at first glance, but even kind of like with this format that we're doing here, without emotion, it would turn into NPR radio news very quickly.
Yeah.
So the fact that we care about what we're talking about is what brings that entertainment element to everything. And when you're in the business of dealing with emotions, burnout is one of the most dangerous things. It really is.
Yep, for sure. Jasmine, you had a question earlier that I want you to make sure that you have a chance to ask. Do you remember it?
No. I wrote it down, or I was thinking about writing it down, but I wrote something else. Oh, yeah, actually, I do remember it. So something I was wondering, because I've been super big on TikTok. Not I've been big. I watch a lot on TikTok. Let me rephrase that. And I see a lot of people that I've been following since 2020 that were like, they were normal, especially over the last 3 years with like being at home and stuff, but they were little creator, and then boom, they suddenly got huge. And now there's this like mega creator, and they've got thousands of followers just like appearing out of nowhere. It's really insane. And so my first part of my question, I guess, that I had was for you working in the business. How have you seen content creation kind of like explode or change since COVID has really destroyed all of our lives?
Oh man. COVID particularly really just threw a monkey wrench into every avenue of business, from a lot of different perspectives as well. So from like a music and a recording standpoint, whereas before COVID, we were bringing artists in to record with us in studio, suddenly we were shipping pieces of gear out to artists so they could do it in their own homes and send us the stems.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, that kind of opened the floodgates to more and more content, if you will. We also saw this really interesting trend in hardware during the pandemic, where Scarlett 2i2s were flying off the shelves. And what the industry would call entry-level equipment was almost impossible to get your hands on because it was selling like hotcakes. The one big positive thing the pandemic brought us was that big flood of sales of that entry-level equipment broke down a lot of barriers that beginning content creators formerly run into and commonly would only solve with money.
Right.
Now there are so many more possibilities and options to move forward. So while it did do a lot of negative, the one big positive to take away from the pandemic and content creation is it kind of democratized everything in a really big sense. It put a lot of the power of creation back into the hands of the people.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's I've been following a lot of artists like music they were people that I heard like snippets or whatever, and now I'm hearing like their singles are coming out on the radio, and I'm like, that's so cool that it's like you were able to do this because you got big on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, just because you were able to finally have these materials. So that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And on the music standpoint, we started to see that happen a little bit. And then the pandemic just kind of kicked everything into high gear, where like in early 2012, you know, everybody was talking about, oh, Skrillex does everything on his laptop. You can do just as good work on your laptop as well. And at that time, while that was true, it required a lot of knowledge. You know, you had to be very well versed in production to be able to do all that on a laptop. Whereas the consumer solutions have really risen to the occasion, and now more than ever, with a laptop and just a small investment, you can feasibly get yourself onto the radio and in very respectable, you know, full professional quality. So that is one of the big positives of the whole event. And to circle back a little bit, to expand on what you had said, where, you know, you watch content creators who are making content and they're making content and they're making content, and then it seems like, boom, they take off and they're a big creator now. There's a lot of ways that can happen, but there's one thing that applies to every situation, and that's every avalanche starts with a snowball. As you guys are aware, being content creators yourself, so much of the work that you put in these early phases doesn't really get noticed the way that we all really hope in our hearts that it does. But the impact of it is still vast, because without those steps, without that beginning of the snowball to start rolling down, you never do get hit with that avalanche. So when you see those creators, yeah, definitely. When you see those creators pop off quickly, it looks quick to us because we didn't see the 2.5, 3, maybe 4.5 years of consistent hard work.
Yeah. That's awesome. For a second, I thought I wasn't on, so my bad.
No, you're here.
But good. Yeah, that's I like that. That's a really good. I'm a visual person. That's a really good like visual idea of how to explain that, and I'm like, wow, I'm a little more energized now. Like, let's go do this.
Poster for your office, Justin. Snowball into an avalanche poster.
Just put it back there next to Marcus Smart, and
there you go. From there.
There you go. That's perfect.
So I've been like, I'm listening, I promise, but I've been staring behind you, and there is something hanging from your ceiling, and I can't tell what it is.
That is a microphone, actually. So just pretty recently, after I got engaged to lovely Mrs. Taylor Hartley.
Congratulations.
And,
congrats.
And pretty shortly after, my landlord offered us a 15-month lease, which is quite rare in Northern California. I'm in Santa Cruz in the Bay Area. And as soon as I signed that 15-month lease, I went and I found where my trusses are running up in my ceiling, and I mounted some microphone stands onto the trusses. And I'll take my headphones off for just a quick second so I can kind of give you a better look.
Yeah.
So this is an SM7B, which is a podcasting darling, if you will, that I keep just mounted right here, just so when vocalists come in for quick practices and things like that, all we need is a little isolation shield behind them. Nice little headphones ready for them as well, but we keep a articulating arm so we can bring it up or down.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
It is the classic SM7B. And we keep 3 or 4 mic stands just kind of ceiling mounted around my home office, just because we don't do things particularly high quality here. We do things quick. This is where we kind of prototype our proof of concepts.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
I was like, what is that thing back there? That is so cool. Wow.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
Definitely get permission. You know, I recommend to your listeners that you go start screwing away willy-nilly into your ceilings. But if you can invest in making things quick and easy, you will notice the results. You know, I find so many times if I have an idea, there's a very real possibility it'll get lost in just the 30-40 seconds it takes me to turn this on, open this program, write this down. So decreasing that from 30-40 seconds to 10 seconds, it doesn't seem like a lot, but the impact is huge.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we just saw that with Jasmine.
I sat down and poof, it all went away.
That's awesome.
That's something I think with the content creation that you and I off screen, Justin, have talked about a lot is for me. So listeners know I talk about it every episode, but I have pretty prominent ADHD. and I forget things like instantly within. It's gonna drive me insane. I'm so sorry, but it's like I forget things almost instantly, and I have sticky notes everywhere to write stuff down. And for me, I'll get to it when I get to it, like our posting videos, and that's something Justin and I have talked passionately about. Is that Justin wants like a schedule, and he's like, "We're gonna post on this date and record on this date at this time at this when the moon is in the waxing phase. We will post this," and it's like so organized. I can't even imagine.
It's
And
all
for
those
me,
ATLC skills.
It must be.
It must be because, well, I didn't go, so that's where I'm lacking in skill. But like this weekend, he texted and he's like, "Friendly reminder, please post the video that you said you would post." And I was like, "Oh yeah, probably get to that Sunday morning." And that doesn't stress me out. But I know for content creation, like when I took over a lot of the social media stuff for TSK, it got so overwhelming to like constantly be posting. And there was a part of me that was like, what's the point? We're getting 1 or 2 likes. And why am I still posting the same picture or like begging people to come watch us? Like, we're getting 2 likes. And I'm forgetting to post frequently enough. And then when I do post, it's like, oh, everybody should come. And it's been very difficult to be constant with this while also trying to do the rest of life.
Definitely.
So it's been, yeah.
And it's that the initial payoff, if you will. It's seeing that 1 or 2 likes, and it seems like a discouraging factor, and it's hard to see that and keep going. And what I say to younger and more beginning content creators is the same thing I'll say to more beginning musicians. When you're on stage, you're not playing for tonight. You're playing for 2 years from now. You know, you're not trying to have an okay show for tonight. You're trying to lay the groundwork for a great show in the future. So when you're posting this content, you don't want to think about the 1 or 2 likes that it's going to get. You want to think about the brand ambassador that's going to be combing through your page 2 years from now, looking at, all right, well, when did this content start? What are these numbers like? And when it comes to that kind of department, set some lofty goals. You know, if you shoot for the moon and you only get halfway, you're still in space. So
I love that.
I love that.
That needs to be somewhere, like a shirt or something.
I'm sure it is. That's probably something that I saw and filed away mentally.
That tickled my brain. That was fantastic.
Thank you. I do have. I won't claim any credit for that one. That was definitely something I've repeated from somewhere.
That's so cool. Okay, so I mean, I know, but obviously our listeners don't. This all sounds like you have experience teaching it. So is that something you have?
Yes, I will do a couple of different lesson types, but mostly through my studio work, I work with a lot of people who are trying to get into content creation. Usually younger to middle-aged adults, anywhere from 18 to 35. We're seeing a really, not necessarily a resurgence because it hasn't happened before, but we're seeing a more advanced age demographic that's getting interested in this stuff in in a monetary sense, you know. Now that TV networks and things like that are kind of going the way of the dinosaur, we're seeing more and more folks really start to pick up the importance of, you know, you don't need a whole film studio to make entertaining content. You just need good people, good stories, and some basic media production skills. And one of the things that I try to focus on with my own students is how to balance everything. Because without a happy and healthy personal life, it's really hard to keep this content genuine and engaging. I'm a bit of a treasure trove of cheesy sayings, but you can't pour from a glass that's not full, you know. And every time you make this content, you are pouring from that glass. You're taking a little bit of yourself and you're sharing it with people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You said it's a older, not an older, but like a advanced age demographic. How does that like feel for you? Because I know you're younger than I am, and like
being a young person myself, it is kind of you know, it's a situation that could create a lot of imposter syndrome if you sat and thought about it too much. I had the benefit of starting pretty early. You know, I started getting into more and more advanced forms of recording from a younger age. at the end of the day, it doesn't really bother me too much, and I find that that age gap really falls away as soon as everybody gets on the same page as far as what we're trying to achieve, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And when the common goal is self-growth, it doesn't really matter to anyone too much where that's coming from, as long as they're getting it. Yeah. So I find kind of starting in a point of recognition, you know, it's definitely not something that I gloss over, and I'm not showing up with a fake mustache. And you know, it's something that I'll talk about, especially if I'm working with a gentleman who's 45, 50 years old. I try to highlight the experience that he has that I don't. You know, he was in working fields while I was still toddling about. So he has a knowledge and an understanding of work culture and history that goes back so much farther than I could. And I find that if you are working in a group, or if you're working with individuals where there is a pretty large age gap, the best thing you can do is try to honor and be mindful of their experience where yours ends.
That's awesome. Yeah, for sure. And I know, like, for Jasmine and I, we have the younger group when we're teaching, and that's like, you know, we have them that we have a little age on them, but it's still the same idea. Is like our experiences might not be the same, so we've got to make sure that we can meet them where they are, and kind of like build on what they have. And that's I love that. I love that you're willing and able to kind of visualize and understand that, you know, they might have more experience than you, but you're able to help them, and the growth is there, and that's the ultimate goal, is for the self growth. So that's awesome to that makes me happy for you. Like,
yeah. It does get it is definitely a thing. I'm somewhat glad you brought it up, just because in every 10 recording sessions, if you're the junior by a good 10-15 years, the 11th, that's going to get a little rocky.
Yeah.
There are some folks who kind of always attribute that age to experience level. Coming from a musical background, it's kind of easier to detach yourself from that, just because there's always a savant. There's always a young musician who's going to have more skill and more publicity than you. So swallowing that bitter pill as a musician really helped me as an instructor, to say that, you know, you are older than me. You do have experience that I don't have, but at the same time, I have things that I can impart onto you that you might not necessarily find anywhere else.
Yeah, definitely.
And in the same vein, I know you guys have probably run into in your own teaching careers. Kids today know things that I couldn't fathom knowing at that age.
Yeah.
It's like we're living in their world. We really are. So
I'm just showing up every day, hoping that I learn something. So.
Yep. So the idea of moving to California, what was the drive behind that? What was your reason?
Mostly work. So I moved to Santa Cruz, California, which is just a short, about hour and 20 minutes outside of San Francisco, about an hour outside of Oakland on the southern side. And I was running a lot of numbers. Growing up and doing what I wanted to do in Aroostook County always faced me with a big limitation. You know, you only need two hands to count the number of musicians who could make real good use out of a single or an album, or to be truly professionally recorded. So we knew from a young age that we had to get out. But exactly where was a bit of a question. I was lucky enough to have some friends here already. There was one Mr. Oliver Garish, who was a Presque Isle native as well. He was in the hockey program, if either of you were ever adjacent to the Presque Isle hockey team. He was already here, and I kind of came out here just as a bit of a catching up, have a good time with some friends. At first, it was just an idea for a California vacation, you know. And while I was here, I kind of noticed a really above average music scene. For a town of this size, we have an abnormally huge pool of creators and an abnormally huge pool of musicians and bands that are here. And there's a couple historical reasons for that, which kind of still represent themselves in that data I was just mentioning. So I took a look at how many people live here. of all the people who live here, how many of these people are paying their bills with music? How many people are paying their bills that are music adjacent? And of that, what are they paying to do it? Then I took a look at the surrounding areas, mostly Oakland and San Francisco. And I had the bit of the idea that, what happened with Los Angeles from 1990 to 2010 is more than likely going to happen with San Francisco from 2020 to 2030, where this music production capital gets built up so vertically that once it hits a certain point, it can't help but spill out into the surrounding areas. And we are really in the middle of that process in San Francisco right now. And more my clientele is coming from that area. So my goal was to put myself close enough to the big cities that I would catch some of that overflow while still having enough local clientele that I didn't need to go in there if I didn't want to.
Fair. Definitely fair. So self-growth obviously is the ultimate goal, but what's the ultimate title that you want?
Oh, that's a good one. I want to say retired.
Oh,
Yeah,
fair.
I like that
so
one. I like
fair.
I want to get to a point where every single thing I am choosing to do because I want to do it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of aspects of what I do that I find a lot of joy in. But no matter how much I love drumming or recording drumming, there are some Tuesdays I wake up and say, "Ooh, I wish I wasn't doing this right now."
Yeah. Definitely.
There are most Tuesdays I wake up to say that. It's pretty much every Tuesday.
Yeah.
Not that I don't love my job. I love it, but
No, I know. I feel you. Tuesday's the hard one.
Tuesdays.
Everybody talks about the impact of Monday, but Tuesday, it's a creeper.
Yeah.
I kind of love Mondays, if I'm being honest. Like, there are definitely hard parts, but I like my job a lot, and I like going in after a weekend and seeing my kids and knowing that they're safe and happy and all that. But then by that, like, Tuesday through Thursday stretch, I'm like, okay, Friday could come anytime now. I'm done. Monday was great. My kids are safe. Let's hustle to the weekend. And then Friday, we have fun Fridays. So
Yep.
I
It's
almost
hard to hate a Friday.
Yeah, it is hard to hate a Friday.
it's hard to
I
hate
almost
Friday.
argue that Thursday is worse than Tuesday though.
Yeah,
That's
Thursdays
an
are
interesting
rough.
point.
Because
That's
you
an
have
interesting
to
point.
get through that
You're
to
so
get to
close.
Friday,
You're so
but
close.
you're so tired from the week before. Like, it's just, I don't know. That's my personal opinion
The
though.
Thursday before a payday,
Oh yeah.
I'm
That's a hard
big
one.
on, because I'm sitting there and I'm like, come on, I just want to pay for something.
Show me the money.
You've got both plans and bills, and you're waiting
Yeah.
for the bills to take care of the plans.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You brought up a point about like the kids, like kids today. They know so much about the world, but I have a bunch of kids that from my very first job that follow me on different social medias, and even kids from student teaching, like from your place, Justin,
Yeah.
that follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And I see the way that they just navigate these social media apps. And it's like, were you born knowing how to work a Snapchat? What is this? I grew up using some of these things. Like, Instagram has been around since I was 11. I've, kind of grown up using it. And these guys know all of the ins and outs of every update before it happens. They understand how to download and hide things. And
Oh yeah.
they have such an innate understanding of this technological world. And yet they're kind of naive about it. In like a way that you're like, ooh, that's got to be unsafe, man. You're posting everything you've ever thought on the internet, but they have thousands of followers and thousands of posts, and
Not to mention, there's the obvious issue of so much of what they're consuming isn't real. It's
Right.
made to look real.
Yeah.
And of course, when you're looking at an idealistic version of somebody's life, it's very easy to be enticed and allured by that.
Yeah.
And it's really hard, especially as a young person, to understand that, oh, that car is rented.
Right.
That jewelry is rented. That's an
Yeah.
Airbnb that he's filming in.
It's not his house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Media
Yeah.
literacy is not something that is taught as much as it should be.
Definitely.
Like the media literacy that we got as kids. I remember the whatever that dog's name was, where they showed like the police dog, and it was media
Yes.
literacy. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
Where they'd be
I
like,
can't
this
remember his name.
Yeah, but that police dog. And he would teach you about media literacy, but like how to avoid predators online.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, like we do hour of code, which is really cool, but it teaches them how to be more code friendly,
Yes.
which I don't love. But then we teach like one day of the year, we're supposed to teach a cyberbullying thing. And I'm like, I took a whole class on how to be a digital citizen. Why is this not like a thing anymore? Why don't we have computer class anymore?
Exactly.
Why is it just, it's just expected that they know it? And I feel like I'm playing catch up every day when they tell me things. I'm like, what does that mean? Hold on.
Yeah.
Where did you learn this?
Exactly. On one hand, it's essential information. On the other hand, there definitely are some groups that don't necessarily want this next generation to be that informed.
Right. For sure.
They absolutely need to be that informed. But if you look at it from like a sales perspective,
oh yeah.
You know, if you are just kind of indoctrinated into this idea that everything you're seeing on Instagram is true, that makes it so much more easy to sell you things through that platform. So there's a really monetary incentive into not highlighting that fact, which is so dangerous. It's so incredibly dangerous.
Well, even going into debt and stuff like that, like some of these kids that I talk to, like that I've known for a few years, and they're talking about, oh, I'm going to buy this, you know, whatever, Range Rover. And I'm like, with whose credit card are you purchasing this vehicle? Who's going to loan you money? I watched you pay, because we do a card system, and I'm like, I watched you pay $100 for something that costs $20, and you put it on layaway to use credit later. Like, what? Who's going to lend you money? And it's just, they're not taught these skills anywhere because we're so busy playing catch up with other things that this generation of people that's teaching these kids skills at home, just they don't have the skills. And
yes.
So
I can also say from like a professional standpoint, the other side of the table is still trying to understand these kids. I can tell you for a fact that people like Universal Music Group, Warner Brothers, EMI Records, a lot of these massive media companies, they have teams of people whose whole job is to just study how young people today are engaging, consuming, and interacting with this content. And after years, these teams of people are still just taking shots in the dark. They have no idea, you know, the way these kids are interacting with media and everything that's happening online today is happening so quickly, and things change in such a fluid and dynamic pace that even these professional entities that are set up to try to study that are having such a hard time doing it that they haven't thought about things from the next generation's perspective.
Right.
You know, they're so concerned with trying to sell you Ariana Grande's next album and how to do that best that they haven't really thought about the ramifications of being on the generation that they're trying to make that sale to.
Yeah.
That's like all of it's just kind of crazy to have like a full like thought about. It's just
it's a strange trip, you know, especially considering that like some of these decisions are becoming huge political issues. Like the aforementioned Universal Music Group, they just pulled their entire library from TikTok. You can no longer use Universal's music on TikTok videos and things like that. Wow. Which then really opened the floodgates for a lot of people to start questioning TikTok about things that normally they would never be interrogated or questioned about. So there's a really perfect instance of a team of professionals who are making 6 to 7 figures each, and their whole job is to just study how kids consume content. That's a shot in the dark that they've just made, and we're all sitting here waiting to see what that's going to do. Is that going to pay off, or is that going to be looked at as one of the key failures of Universal Music in the past 10 years?
Right. Yeah. That's scary. A thought that I just had, and this is kind of circling back to the content creation, sorry, but I just had it. We're talking about TikTok and all that stuff. Like, what is the best form of medium to get the information out there, to get your personal information out there, to get the creation that you're trying to post? What is the best form to get that following?
So there's a couple different schools of thought there. In my professional opinion, the best one is whatever is next. It's not what we have right now, it's what's coming up.
Yeah.
You got to understand that, like, we lived through the rise and fall of Vine.
Yep.
The people who are on
I miss Vine.
I know, right? It was great.
Yeah.
But the people who are on Vine and really blowing up when Vine was in its heyday, those were the content creators that started with Vine when Vine had almost nobody on it. And that's how they got favored by those algorithms. And that's how, when other people joined the platform, they were competing against people who had already been here for a year or two. So in my opinion, if you're trying to get traction on TikTok right now, you're a day late and a dollar short. You need to be preparing for whatever is going to be replacing TikTok next. And that means putting a lot of nets out. That means being prepared for a lot of different situations. You know, there's got to be 20, 30 contenders for who's going to take that spot next. And there's no real way to know which one's going to be the one.
Right.
So a good rule of thumb is to kind of pick your core 3 that are happening right now, so you can stay current, so you can stay competitive, but keep a close eye on what's coming up. What other platforms are being developed, and what are people talking about? What are people labeling the next big thing? And if you can get there before everybody else, you're already putting yourself in a great position.
Definitely. That's great advice. I like that.
Yes.
Because,
That's not
even
something I
right
would have
now-
thought of.
Yeah.
No.
So, like, right now, we're looking at the possibility of a legal ban on TikTok.
Yep.
Yeah.
For people who 10 years ago invested so much time and energy in making this short form content, which started with Vine, those people, when Vine ended, TikTok was what took its place. So your heaviest Vine players immediately ran hard into TikTok. And then those people grew with the platform to a height that is almost staggering. And now they're looking at the possibility of their income evaporating almost overnight. So you have to hope for their sake that they are diversified and that they are ready for whatever is going to take TikTok's place next.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Troy, I appreciate you. We appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
It was
awesome.
great to talk about this stuff with you. Is there anything that you would like to say before we get into social media stuff and all that?
I mean, if I could generalize, if I can put an umbrella over everything that I've said, I think the biggest key point is be yourself and stay having fun.
Definitely.
Identify the areas that you don't like, either make them easier for yourself, outsource them, find solutions to handle the kind of sticking points. But stay yourself, even when you are consuming all of this crazy content that's obviously manufactured. More and more people are connecting with people just being people. So as a person, if you can continue to people, that'll be good.
Definitely.
Continue to people. I like it.
Troy, is there anywhere that they can find you social media wise?
Oh, I am all over the place, but if I'm going to plug one, I'm going to plug the current group that I'm running with right now. I'm playing with an alt-country band by the name of Kentucky Mule. We're going to be opening for Melvin Seals at the Redwood Mountain Fair in Santa Cruz this summer. However, you can catch us on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and any other streaming service you might like to use.
Nice. That's awesome. And Jasmine, where can they find you?
They can find me on all social media at Asminstah, ASMINSTAH. And on TikTok, I believe there's a 1721. If you type the first part, I'm the only one. Where can they find you, Justin?
Anywhere and everywhere, because as Troy said, you got to have your nets out. So the Soccer King 1239 on some platforms and TSK 1239 on the others. Yeah, Jasmine.
I was going to plug the podcast on TikTok and our new Instagram, which I am creating tonight.
Whoop, whoop.
It will be live, so it'll be live on. Yeah, it'll post before this comes out, but
so it's live.
Instagram.
Go find it.
Yeah, it's live. No Impulse Control podcast on Instagram.
Sweet, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jasmine and Justin, with
Yes,
Impulse
thank
Control
you.
for having me, and I hope everybody at home had a really fun time listening.
Yeah, this was great. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.
Peace.